Namaskar, bhaiyo behno. Good evening, good morning, depending on the time where you are in the world. Today, I have brought in a very important guest, Dr. Amit Thadani. Dr. Amit Thadani lives in Mumbai. He's a general surgeon and he does a lot of social work also. He's active in the doctor organizations also. And he has worked in disaster hit areas. He has worked during COVID. He has taken care of over 10,000 patients without cost in those areas. And he also takes care of 300 students' education. And for some strange reason, I would say that he dropped his surgeon's scalpel and picked up a pen. And he has come out with a book, The Rationalist Murders. We would remember the murder of four rationalists. I would rather say so-called rationalists, but since they are dead, I would not use any term which can be taken as insulting. But these four people, Dr. Narendra Dabholkar was murdered in 2013. Kalburgi and Comrade Pansare were murdered in 2017, and Gauri Lankesh was murdered in 2017. Of these, Dr. Narendra Dabholkar was the most famous for his Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti, ANIS, and he and Sanatan Sanstha had a running battle for the views he expressed, the way these rationalists argued about Hindu superstitions or Hindu rituals and traditions vis-a-vis Sanatan Sanstha, which is more of a conservative Hindu organization. And Dr. Amit Thadani has nothing to do with politics. He has no interest in even Hindutva issues, basically, apart from taking care of his religion and taking care of the traditions which he thinks are important. But he's not into any kind of social activism on these issues. He's active on the disaster and humanitarian issues. But he got interested in this case and did a massive research over years. And in fact, his book has record, I think, 832 references. For a book of this size, to have so many references is surprising. That shows his studious nature. So I began my discussion with the Dr. Amit Thadani to first ask him what attracted him this case. It has nothing to do with his field of work, nothing to do with the work he does. So how did he end up doing research on this book and this particular case of this murder of four rationalists?
नमस्ते रतन जी.
Welcome. हाँ जी.
थैंक यू. अच्छा, इसमें ये केस में what has happened is that I have this little curious streak. So if they get interested in something, then I really start looking at it and go as deep as I can into these matters. And it just happened that I had a chance meeting with an advocate who was representing some of the accused in this case, in the Abulkar case, in fact. And he just told me at that time that every 2 years they are rounding up a couple of people and naming two different people as the murderers, and they've already named like three sets of people so far. And I don't know how many more people they will name as the murderers in future also. So I found it extremely strange, and then I thought, okay, let's just look it up. Is he actually saying this, and how is it possible? So I looked it up, and that was actually the case where in the Dabholkar murder, two people were initially apprehended for an unrelated crime, and a weapon recovered from them was identified that this is likely to be the murder weapon. But they, despite being arrested for the crime, were never charged for the murder of that because they were not Hindutva people, I would say. Okay. And then two other people were named after 2 years for the same crime. Again, those two were never found, never arrested. Those two were Hindu activists who had been absconding in some other case earlier. And we will definitely touch upon what this other case was at a later time, right? Uh, those two were named, I guess, because they knew that these two are not going to be found because they hadn't found them in 7 years. Uh, After another 2 years, a third set of two people were named who were also Hindu activists, who
Okay.
were not even from the concerned city or not even from the concerned area. They were also arrested in some other case and rounded up in this case and charged for the murders. And eventually, those are the two people who are currently being tried in court. So it is actually true that so this all I found out, and then I got really curious. Okay, how is it possible that charge sheets change like this? That the accused change in charge sheets, and so I procured a copy of the charge sheet, which was itself more than 10,000 pages. I started reading the entire charge sheet to understand what exactly is this matter, and my goodness, I was shocked beyond words. And that was the time when I decided that no, this is way too much material over here, and this is real injustice which is being done to people. That you're taking very trivial and frivolous things and trying to build up a case as serious as murder, and that also murder of not one or two people but of four people. uh, Let me give you an example in this. Like, one of the people who's been arrested, and he unfortunately is still behind bars, is Dr. Virendra Tawde. He's an ENT surgeon. Okay.
Okay.
He was arrested initially in the case as a so-called mastermind of the case.
Mastermind.
And he is a sadhak of the Sanatan Sanstha who's been staying in an ashram since years. He's even left his wife and he's staying there only because he's completely into his sadhana. Now, this man has been arrested on the basis of what? On the basis of an email correspondence. This is arrested in 2016, mind you, on the basis of an email correspondence of 2007 with one other activist who was an Hindu activist, in which he had just written, because at that time Dr. Dabholkar had brought his anti-superstition bill, which was an extremely anti-religion
Yeah.
bill. I have written about it in my book, and it was
No, I would
extremely.
like to stop you for a moment and let the viewers understand what is the Andhashraddha Nimuran Bill and 2003, which was blocked for some time, but then the after the murder of Narendra Dabholkar, because of the sensitivity of the case and the emotions aroused, Congress government pushed that bill through, and the bill outlaws the following practices: growing hair locks, deity procession, spreading of myths in the name of religion and spirituality, astrology and astrologers, claiming spiritual treatment, Bali, animal sacrifice to appease a deity, giving or receiving sacred threats or mantras, treating diseases by traditional methods, mantra tantra, herbs and roots. This would effectively mean banning Ayurveda and Siddha medicines, any kind of religious scriptures claiming fraudulent phenomena, happening or miracles. This would effectively outlaw most all the religious texts across religions. It also proposed recognized social institution organizations to implement the act and provided for them to be given executive authority, which means the very people, Andhashraddha Nimuran people led by Dr. Dabholkar, and be treated as public servants. So this is the kind of bill. It reminds me of the similar favorite of another bill, communal violence bill, which was also equally severe against Hindu society. And this bill was opposed also by Christians and also by Muslims because many of the practices would also fall into this. But though if you see any of the Andhashraddha Nirmoolan cases, they are generally directed towards Hindus, never against Muslims or Christians. In fact, there is a case of this case you also mentioned. There is a case of one Mr. What is the name of that person? Just a moment. No,
Sanal is the name.
son Adamaruku. He survived and he exposed the fraud of Hindu Tantra, but he had to escape Bharat when he exposed the fraud of Jesus' feet, water dropping from dripping from Jesus' feet, and he was charged under the 295A blasphemy case. Many cases were put up. He was threatened and he had to leave India. He's living away from his family because condition of the clergy for him to return is to seek apology for making blasphemous statements, which are not. So this in all is what we are talking about when we talk of the superstition bill that Dr. Thadani talked about. Yeah, Amiji, carry on.
So this bill was the original form, and you can see how draconian the bill was. Later on, because of so much of opposition from across the religions, they decided to tame the provisions a little bit. But even after taming, it was still extremely harsh, and in most ways, the crimes were not properly defined, the penalties were not defined, and just something like physical stress, causing physical discomfort is outlawed. Causing physical discomfort means it can literally be anything. It can
It
be
can be
ear
a yoga
piercing. It
posture
can be,
also.
yeah, it can be anything. So it's again very left vague and easy to misinterpret kind of thing. So this was the bill which was being opposed, and these emails which on which Dr. Tawade has been charged is an email from that correspondence for opposing the bill, and it does not even mention Dabholkar's name.
Hmm.
It just says that we will be tracking what is going on with this anti-superstition bill.
So
Keep a watch on that.
criticizing somebody can lead to the charge of murder tomorrow,
Yes,
right?
that is what. And also, there was another eyewitness which was produced by these people, which I have mentioned later on, especially in the Pansare case, where they just hinted around that he may be involved, and not a direct accusation on him, because they just kept saying that he kept coming on his black motorcycle, on his motorcycle. Why? Because two people were shot on a motorcycle, and that he wanted two people to stay with us. And
Hmm.
those two people were the people whom initially Kolhapur police had charge sheeted in the murder of Comrade Pansare. Now,
Hmm.
turns out that this person himself is facing charges of corruption in a case related to the Kolhapur deity itself,
Hmm.
because he had taken some contract for putting silver covering on the Rath of Bhagwan and done some dhandli in that. And Sanatan Sanstha only had filed a case against him. Now, it's very convenient that such a person suddenly says, he approached me to buy a weapon and to keep people. So,
Hmm.
and then it got badly exposed in the court, because when the matter went to the Kolhapur court in the Pansare case, the judge gave Dr. Tawade bail, categorically stating that there is absolutely no evidence against him in any manner.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the moment one of the activists gets bail in one case, they are arrested as accused or mastermind or whatever in other
Hmm.
cases. So, despite getting such a categorical thing, he is still behind bars. Now it's been 7 years he's behind bars.
That's
Initially,
very
when
sad
this,
actually.
and
It's
like
very
him, there
sad
are
that, yeah, yeah. I
yes,
mean, there are hundreds of such. I think many people, right from yeah.
there are dozens of such activists who have been rounded up, put behind bars, and tortured into giving so-called voluntary statements. Which have actually no judicial value as such, but just to show that these people were arrested and they have confessed to their crime.
Hmm.
Only thing,
And
you
in fact,
imagine
you
you're
talked about,
tortured, that we
yeah.
will bring your family here, we will bring your relatives here, we will hang you upside down and torture you. And they've actually
Hmm.
done that also, and it's been proven
Hmm.
in court that they were tortured also.
Yeah,
Many of the
Karnal Purohit's
activists.
story, Sadhvi's story, they are the same. And since you talked about no charge sheeting or no trial beginning for any of these people, it's very interesting that you talk of a CBI Mumbai director who received police medal and 25 rupees cash reward from Karnataka government for solving a case in 2017 of Gauri Lankesh, where the case has not started. Or there they have
Now,
doubt
now
about the charge itself.
yeah. So now the
That's
trials are
ridiculous.
going on. Now the trials are finally going on.
Yeah.
And yes, it is true that Mr. Nair of the CBI was given a President's Meritorious Service Award in 2017. And also that the officers who investigated the Gauri Lankesh case were given cash rewards of 25 lakh each. So
Okay.
yes, it's very shocking that people get paid to additional amounts to do what is their job, and that also when the job is so badly done. It's not as
Right.
if the trials have gone very well. The trials will go definitely against the police. Most of the people are going to get, at least if not all, are going to get acquitted, because there's simply no content. I
Hmm.
have been through the charge sheet and the content is rubbish. Now, what's happening in the court is that the investigating officer is getting bashed left, right,
You,
and center. You know.
it seems that within the charge itself there are many contradictions.
Yes. So when the matter of Dabholkar murder was in the Pune police, the sketches made of the witness of the accused in the case are completely different from the sketches which the CBI got made. 2 years later, right? So they are not the same. The first charge sheet of the CBI itself names Vinay Pawar and Sarang Akolkar as the murderers of Dr. Dabholkar, and the second charge sheet, which is supposed to be supplementary, actually changes the names of the murderers and the location and
Oh.
the entire circumstances around the case completely, and it names Sharad Kalaskar and Sachin Andure, who are completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
It says nothing about what was the role of the first two people you charge sheeted, and what was the role of the two people originally from whom the weapon was actually recovered, who were known
Right.
history cheaters, right? They were Vikas Khandelwal and Manish Nagori. They were known history cheaters with a long criminal record, and those people have got tadipar against them at many places, and they are like notorious people. So it's very shocking that that in the name of supplementary charge sheet to be filed, you change even the basic facts of the case.
Mm-hmm.
It
There is
just shows
also
that,
very
yeah.
There is also a very interesting case of special permission being taken for searching for a gun, which was supposed to be the gun of attack, and then crores rupees spent, and finally gun was found from Arabian Sea, which was found to be different from what the original gunshots were. So can you
Yes.
put a little more information on that?
Now, so what happens in these cases is that the weapon, the CBI, the initially when the Pune police conducts the investigations, and they send out a message to the forensics that you keep a watch on any weapon that comes in from the any source, uh, which potentially matches the bullets which are recovered from Dabholkar's body, because we are not getting any clues. They send out a report after a few months that we've got one weapon which may be the match with this bullets fired, and that was the weapon which was recovered from these people. Now that
Mm.
weapon is already in the CBI custody, Manish Nagori and Vikas Khandelwal. Now after this, when the first charge sheet is filed, that Sarang Akulkar, Vinay Pawar are named, they say that after committing the murder, these people traveled into the middle of the city, left the clothes and weapons and the motorcycle there at a designated spot, and then went away. Okay, now how did that weapon reach Vikas Khandelwal Nagori? Nobody knows. Or is it the same weapon? No, they are not even saying that
Mm-hmm.
it's the same weapon, right? In the second charge sheet, which is filed, where Sharad Kalaskar and Sachin Andure are named, Sharad Kalaskar is coerced into making a statement that he took the weapon after the murder, and then he took the weapon and dismantled it and threw it into Thane Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which of these three stories? I simply ask, which of these three stories is true?
True.
Weapon is recovered and with CBI, or weapon was left behind in Pune and you don't know where it is, or the weapon is dismantled and thrown into the Thane Creek. Now, to show that the murders of all these four people are linked, what they did was they said, "Okay, look, one weapon between the Dabholkar and Pansare case is common." Where one weapon seems to match the bullets recovered, one weapon from Pansare and Kalburgi is common, and one from Kalburgi and Gauri Lankesh is common, which
Mm-hmm.
itself is extremely questionable, because you are saying the weapon is with you in custody of the CBI. So how did that weapon come out for committing other murders, right? And that's been with
Mm-hmm.
you since a few hours of Dabholkar's murder. Right? Those
Strange.
people were
Yeah.
arrested almost on the same day from whom the weapon is recovered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they created one forensic lab report, rather one forensic lab report of Kalina was obtained, which said that the weapons in Dabholkar case and Pansare case are not the same. So second lab report was brought in from Karnataka, because they wanted to show the connection with the Karnataka murders. The Gauri Lankesh and MM Kalburgi were in Karnataka, right, in Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
So there they wanted to show the connection. So that Karnataka lab report says this, that the one weapon is common between them. Okay. Now the two labs don't agree that there is on the reports. One says the weapons are not the same. The second says that one weapon is the same. So how to solve
Mm-hmm.
this? So now this conflict came into the judicial record, because Dr. Justice Dharmadhikari was sitting and personally monitoring the case. So it
Mm-hmm.
came into record. Now, once it came into record, the CBI got stuck. That how do they explain this? So they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll send these weapons to and bullets to Scotland Yard, and we'll get the report from Scotland Yard. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now they took dates based on this. Till then, activists are still in jail. Every date the activist is still in jail, and these people go on taking date after date, saying, no, we have not yet got the report, we have not yet got the report. Finally, after 6-8 months have gone,
But
the judges,
but don't the
the
judges, yeah, that's what I'm asking.
judges gave
Don't
them a
judges
very
raise
long
opinion?
rope. Yeah, the judge, rather judge, I should say, gave them a very, very long rope. Right, because he had some personal interest in the matter. I have written about that also. That Justice Dharmadhikari's father was a close associate of Dr. Dabholkar.
Oh,
So he ideally should not even have been hearing the case because it's his personal interest matter. Because he's a known family, person for him. So he should not have taken, but he's not only taken, he's monitoring the case also, and he kept monitoring even after charge sheets are filed. That is a separate thing.
that's fine, but how can they keep an accused in the jail when police is simply
He's
not giving reports for months together?
Yeah, so the whole purpose was that you keep pushing, keep pushing. Eventually, even Dharmadhikari lost it and said that, okay, I'm giving you this final date on which you have to produce the report from Scotland Yard.
Hmm.
And you'll be shocked to know that the CBI then files a statement that we never sent anything to Scotland Yard
Oh my God.
because we don't have an agreement with UK government.
How can they be, how can they be so
So we are sending to
brazen?
Gujarat FSL.
How can it be so brazen?
It
They
is
have no
that brazen, and you
accountability.
imagine these officers have gotten away with it and been awarded medals for meritorious service.
By God.
I mean, imagine,
Ridiculous.
and at this time, if you go through the media, you will find numerous articles on this Scotland Yard, all saying that weapons are with Scotland Yard, and there are a couple of articles which are published, which have even said that Scotland Yard report is corroborated the
No, I
Karnataka
can
FSA report.
understand. I can
You know,
understand the journalist getting off the hook, but for a police officer or CBI or police institutions, for them to get off hook by making brazenly false statements, is really they should be behind the bars. If at least they should be pulled out and suspended for what they were
this
able to do.
this has been a media trial, sir. The whole purpose of this entire charade, I would say, is a media trial, because you want to create a narrative of Hindu terror, that Hindu organizations are behind these murders, that Hindus are also terrorists. It's not only one particular community who are terrorists, and this is not the first time that the Sanstha has been charged with
No,
something like
I
this.
would, Doctor Amit, I can go to the extent to say, okay, they might accuse might have actually murdered some person, but for an agency to keep on faking that entire investigation is really shocking. I remember the serial that came on the TV recently, Scoop, where police can put anybody behind Bihar. Anybody can be proven to be a murderer or a robber or a thief. That is the kind of power they wield. That is the kind of torture they can create for a person to actually, they give up. We
So
saw
they
it in
have
Saffron
gone.
terror cases. This is the case
Yeah,
of
yeah.
again of this rationalist murder. Same similar thing is happening. It's really
In
very
Comrade
painful.
Pansare, yeah, in Comrade Pansare case, what was the thing? They again started looking particularly at Sanatan Sanstha activists. Phones were tapped, they were kept under watch, and eventually one conversation of one person, Samir Gaikwad, was picked up with some girl he was chatting, and उसमें उसने ऐसे conversational remark he made like कि पंसारे का हो गया, now what about वागले. So that was the remark on basis of which Samir Gaikwad was arrested. One witness was produced who identified him as the murderer, and he was charge sheeted also. Okay. Now imagine the frivolity of this entire thing, because after being charge sheeted, the nothing else matches, and the minister in the government has to stand up and say that we arrested him only on basis of suspicion and not facts.
These
And
cases are nearly
you know,
8 to 10 year old now.
and you read the stories which have been cooked up on him, that he conducted numerous training programs inside jungles and whatnot, and he was not even there. He was in Thane when the murder happened in Kolhapur, and
Mm.
that is proven because of his phone records and because of his witnesses and everything. But just because one stray remark in a whole long conversations, you imagine the kind of desperation they had to try to catch people from linked to these organizations so that they
May
could
I
file
would
some cases.
I
You
would
know,
only say that this is a premeditated way of, targeting some people, like the case of Hindu terror, and then creating a theory, then creating a story about murder and rationality. In that case, actually, rationality died a thousand dead because the people who were unfortunately murdered, their murderers seem to have gotten away. So far,
They
at
did get
least, I
away.
hope.
Nobody's
Yeah, so
interested, sir.
far.
Nobody's interested in knowing who actually, murdered these people. Their lives were used for the cause of leftism, and their death also is used for the same cause, right? It's an ideological thing. They are not interested in finding out who's killed. And in Gauri Lankesh case, it is extremely likely that her own Naxal brothers and sisters have killed her, because
I
she
recall,
was, yeah.
yeah, I recall when these cases came up, there was huge media noise. Hindutva people killed them, this and that. These stories were already ready by the time, whenever these people are murdered, without any proof, anything on the paper, any evidence, they would straight away say RSS VHP, RSS VHP Hindutva, they have killed these people. And now, after 10 years, there is nobody to even say what's happening.
Now,
And in the same
exactly,
book,
because even
you have
within
also
hours,
the kind
yeah.
of bias, the kind of oppression that was done. You talk of Advocate Sanjeev Punelekar who was arrested, and he was a lawyer because lawyer of an accused cannot be arrested, and he was arrested. What is the
Yes,
reason for his arrest?
he was made an accused and he was arrested.
But
So to basically terrorize the entire defense team, basically, what
what was the
happened
reason
was,
given? Yeah.
now the reason given was very frivolous, is, and the trial is going on in the Dabholkar case, and not a single witness has taken his name, and not a single place where or circumstance where his name has even come up once till now. And it will not come up because he was deliberately implicated. And the reason he was implicated is because he had filed cases against the CBI investigating officer Nankumar Nair in some other matters, alleging that he had taken some personal benefits for something else.
Hmm.
So then Nankumar Nair decided that, okay, I'm going to show you now what is the power of CBI, and then uh, arrested him as accused and kept him behind bars for more than 40 days.
Another thing that you point out, the kind of narrative we talked about that is built immediately by the left with some ready stories, ready accusations. You have also have a chapter where you talk about serial murders of Hindu activists and leaders, which are never linked to any jihadi group or any of Khalistani groups, etc. You have listed murder of Hindu leaders in Punjab, in Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. You could have added Kerala, etc. There is endless list. But
Yes.
when this happens, there is no narrative, there is no story, and it is taken as normal killing. In fact, many times police says in such cases, personal dushmani thi. That's how they close the
Yes.
case. But in this case,
But
there is no personal dushmani.
in the list which is there in the book, the a whole long list, and all the lists are only of the time period in which these four people were killed, that is 2013
Yes,
to
yes, I
2017.
saw that. Right.
And there are well over 100 names in that list. And the list, if you see the list from Karnataka, almost all of those people were murdered by one organization, that is PFI.
Hmm.
And you see the people who were arrested for their murders were let off by Siddaramaiah, and they were just charged under some less sections. And even the
Hmm.
investigation into their this thing was sabotaged so that they could get away.
Yeah.
Whereas the Hindu activists who've been arrested have been charged with terrorism. Now, which is the organization
True.
out of these people which is banned due to terror activities? Now we know.
Hmm.
But that is the whole narrative that you will basically, it's the same Malegaon Part 2, I should say. And
Hmm.
if you go into the history of this, these are actually linked. The efforts to implicate Sanatan Sanstha has been going on from 2008-9, right
Yes.
from the time of this Hindu terror Malegaon blast. Because the first time
Right.
activists from Sanatan were actually charged with terror was by ATS chief Karkare,
Right.
who now we know is one of the main key players in the whole narrative of so-called Hindu terror.
Hmm.
So, of course, all those cases got thrown out by the court, which acquitted each and every person who was charged with terror till date. So there is nothing at all which has been proven. Even now, the accused in these cases, in the Dabholkar case and in the other cases, have been charged under UAPA, and that charge on the UAPA is only so that they don't get bail. They will stay inside only.
True. So, looking at all this, see, I do hope that the real culprits are caught, the real culprits are arrested, and they are given due punishment by the law. and people who have been falsely charge sheeted, who have not faced the trial despite years of torture and years of being in jail, they are released soon. And I hope the government takes some interest and puts this in some kind of fast track trials. I would say at the end of this entire writing, what are your feelings and what do you think? How, what came to your mind after actually analyzing everything and coming with the book?
So this book came out of that anger, that how
Right.
can agencies be so brazen and so, how can they manufacture this entire thing like this? And that became very obvious when you go through the charge sheet and when you go through what is being written about those people in the media, because they are completely opposite. Imagine a situation where the judge has to tell in court that whatever evidence is being produced before the media is not being produced before us. Imagine the kind of severity of criticism that that line itself is, that you will keep leaking juicy bites to the media, but you are not bringing material before us to proceed with trial. Instead, you are taking
True.
tariq pe tariq to make sure that you don't try these people. So this is how the, that is what I got extremely upset about, that, and I decided that no, there's just too much material over here. It can't just be an article or two, it has to be at least a book which has to come out on this. And it's from that place of pain and anger at the way that our police and investigating agencies function, and that the way that these investigations are deliberately manipulated, to create conspiracies where there are none. And that's the reason why I put in a full chapter on police reforms at the end of the book, because as
True.
long as these police and these investigating agencies are not given a free hand to genuinely go after the people who they think, are responsible, and they keep getting influenced by the political powers of the time, this is going to continue. This is not going to stop, and this is not the first case where such
True.
things have happened. You know.
Yeah, state operation, use of police for personal or political purpose is very common. It's also common in India. Now, having released the book a few weeks back, what has been the response from responsible people? Let us say people like you and me who are not in the power structure, but people who are in the power structure. Has anybody responded to the book without naming them?
So far, no. But there are a lot of people who are maybe not in power, but they are, you know, uh, maybe you can say, like, for example, I met a very senior police officer from UP just last week, and he had started reading my book, and he was saying that I'm going to read it fully because I'm quite shocked at what you've written.
Mhm.
So a DGP level person. So so like that, it's starting to percolate in central or state government. I don't know, but I've heard that some of the ministers have actually got the copies of my book. So whenever they read it, maybe they will realize that there is a grave miscarriage of justice that's happening here. You know. So let's see.
Yeah, I think in today's India, where we claim to have a fascist Hindu state, Hindu activists are still much more maligned, much more targeted, whether through law or whether through media, and accused of various things, while people who actually perpetrated violence go scot-free. They claim to be champions of democracy. They claim to be champions of freedom of expression, etc., etc. So this book, I think, is a must-read by people who actually want to understand how deep the rot is, one, and how people are can be targeted. Point two and point three, that how the state apparatus is so insensitive. Whichever the party in the government, it's nothing to do with the party in the government. It's true that especially the secular parties are very unforgiving towards any person who claims to be Hindu or claims to be Hindu activist. But at the same time, this police apparatus will work both ways, whether it's Congress party or BJP-led parties. Police apparatus is still manipulated right here, and then they behave the way they can because they have that power. But as you rightly pointed out, reforms the only way. I keep telling you can bring in 100 laws, you can bring in more and more stringent laws. You can have a Nirbhaya law, you can have communal violence law, etc. But until the police is reformed, these laws will not make any difference, because ultimately it's the law enforcement that is more important than the laws itself, because laws will follow the implementers, and that is where the real problem is. And politicians won't stop interfering, so nobody wants a real freedom to be given to police. But where police gets freedom, there also a serious problem, because then they have typical the power of the state, and they behave so badly. We know about that also. So where is the balance? That's very important issue, for which judiciary, politicians, and activists have to open their eyes and find a way out. There has to be some monitoring mechanism where innocent people who are put behind bar for political reasons don't end up rotting in the jail for years together. That's my prayer. And thank you so much, Dr. Amit Thadani, for being so forthright and taken the trouble of writing this book. And I hope it opens the eyes of the state government, whether Karnataka or Maharashtra, and right treatment is given to the real culprits. If you have any last comments, please go ahead and make your comments.
No, I hope that your podcast is seen by people who are, relevant, in power, and who look into this matter, and at least, these people who are in jail since so many years, they should at least get bail. There are people who have been charged with
True.
lesser crimes, so whose penalty itself is 7 years of imprisonment. The
Hmm.
maximum penalty is 7 years imprisonment, and they have already been in jail for 5 years, whereas they should become eligible for bail by about 3.5 years, which is half the term as per law.
True.
But in spite of being eligible, those people are not being given bail, and some of them have actually had to go to Supreme Court to get bail.
Hmm.
I mean, it is that sad a situation where every effort is made to keep these people behind bars, just to keep running the narrative. It's
True.
a very sad state of affairs, I'm unfortunate to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amit Thadani, for taking all the trouble of writing the book and also coming on the show for explaining the facts about your book. He has just given some facts. You'll find the entire book very fascinating. If you don't, I mean, it's a brutal murder. It's a horrible scenario for people who are in the jail. I said fascinating from the point of view how situations and people and law can be exploited to make people suffer, and not the people not getting justice. Thank you so much, Dr. Tharani.
Thank you.
Namaste.